This is the Crossing Bridges podcast, addressing the topics of leadership, criminal justice, and fatherhood. How can we become better leaders? Where are all the daddies? Why is crime at an all-time high? Here is your host, Bayonle Arashi.
Excellent, man. Excellent, Sam. You mentioned something that is very profound, which is keeping journal. One of my own mentor as well, Jim Ron, it is. I never met him. In fact, it was only a few years ago that I learned that he's been dead for a couple of years now. But I started listening to his work as a young entrepreneur back home in Nigeria, and he was a person that mentioned journaling. And again, like I said, it's interesting that you mentioned that though I didn't start as early as you started, but for almost 20 something years of my life as well, I have a couple of journals that I think I have kept, and a lot of people actually have no idea the power that is in this. I mean, some people will be listening, but they might not know this. But as I'm talking to you right now, my current journal is right with me, right here. I am always journaling. And you said, and I was also happy that you were able to be vulnerable enough to say you have lost that touch a little bit by not journaling in a while. So I want to urge you to definitely go back to it, because definitely for you to arrive where you are today, that definitely has a lot of contribution to it. So journaling was one of the things that really change and evolutionize your life. And you also mentioned about your mentor, who happens to be a person of an African American. How did you come about him, and what were some of the lifelong lesson that this person taught you that you think till today, as a man, as a father, as a husband, some of them are still stuck with you?
So as far as how we met him, he was running for political office and he knocked on our door and asked us to vote for him. Or I guess his wife did initially, but that's how we met him. I'm glad we met him. He's a phenomenal human, and I'm so grateful for him. Some of the bigger things that he taught me, it was really to be God-fearing, to really believe and know that God is in control, that God has your back, and that he wants you to be happy. That this world and this life was meant for us to become creators and to be happy and to learn and grow, and that we weren't meant here or sent here just to be victims, but that we were sent here to become creators. And those life lessons, crucial. He also has just a service mentality, and he's willing to stand up for what he believes in. That's a big thing, especially in today's world. It's so easy to watch injustice happen on the sidelines, to watch things go down outside of ourselves and say, you know what, is that really my problem? Is that my fight, or is it somebody else's? And I don't know that there's a right way to fight social issues. Unfortunately, there's a lot of divide on far as what's the solution for certain things. I mean, especially in kind of the area that this podcast is targeted in the criminal justice system, there's a lot of different ideas, and I love that your focus is bringing fatherhood back. That's just not one of the solutions that people have. They have all the other solutions, but not bringing fatherhood back into the equation. And I think that we need to stand up for what we believe in. We need to be willing to share what we are passionate about and to stand our ground. And I think that is what he helped me with some of the most, is like set clear boundaries, maintain those boundaries. Don't let somebody walk on your boundaries without your permission. You know, I think that if we all had more boundaries with ourselves, we would be a happier society, we'd be a happier people, and ultimately, because we would want others to respect our boundaries, we'd be more willing to respect their boundaries.
Thank you very much for mentioning what this podcast stands for, and that is where we're going to shift to now. But you have made some very, very strong point that change your life, and I'm always very happy to lay emphasis on this so that anyone that is just joining will understand where we're coming from. So for you as a young man that grew up in a home with many kids, there was no competition, but your parents did their best to provide the basics for you. They provide a community where you can grow up, that can help them to also raise you as a strong man. And also you had a mentor. And based on what you've told me so far, this mentor obviously introduced you to God, which is one of the things I stand for as a person, to be the foundation of any man, any man's life. God, I feel, should be your foundation. And you, according to what you said, also introduce you to the importance of service, which I think is lacking in the world that we live in today as well. So those basic things, I believe, already gave you enough foundation to be able to be where you are today. And as you said, Crossing Bridges podcast was born out of my passion. Again, I wasn't born in America, and I'm very, very privileged. I always say this: I'm not someone that is entitled to anything, but I'm grateful that I have a chance to come to this great country where, if you have a dream, if you have an idea, if you are willing to put in work into that thing that you believe in and that idea, you can succeed at it. I still have planned to do some other big things. And one of the reasons why the podcast was born was because I was working in the criminal justice system, as I told you, as a correctional officer, but I was looking beyond what could be the problem. Talking to men that are older than me, as you said, and learning from their experience and imagining that some of them keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. And I had to sit down and be like, what could be the problem? And I start thinking. And when I asked a couple of them questions, I discovered that they had no mentor. They had not the kind of hand that you had, that I had growing up, for somebody to say, hey, young man, come here, or oh, no, don't do that. They didn't have that. And some of them do have it, but they probably didn't take advantage of it. Now that you are where you are, um, what are you doing at the moment to make sure that your work is not just for your own family alone? Because obviously, your family, your parents have raised a very good man, and you are a man of community. But how are you contributing to your community? Before I'll ask you about what you think of how we can start bringing fathers back, but what is your own work in the community at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm focusing on my own family. I'm trying to be present for my own children, and that's not the easy. It's easier said than done for sure. I work from home, but that doesn't mean I'm always present, right? That the phone is so easy to be in the way of your children, and there's so many other things to keep your time. So being able to stay focused and spend quality time with your kids, I'm not great at it. It's a daily battle, honestly, because the phone and business never stops. We live in a world where like business never stops, and we have to control our time a little bit better. And I'm getting better for sure, but I still have a long way to go. So first off is focusing on my family. Second is participating in my religious community, making sure that I'm passing on good principles there. And then I have a podcast called Fuel Your Legacy, and I promote that podcast, and I do that podcast really with the intention of helping other people see that they have value, other people see that they can have self-respect, other people be exposed to people who came from nothing and became something. And I think that that is an important message. So that's probably my biggest area of involvement, is start with my family, then go to my religious community, and then sharing with the world on the podcast, having guests on who are passionate about what they do and are focused on becoming their best selves. Because I think that's where it starts, is we have to start with ourselves. We can talk about change till we're blue in the face about other people. It's so easy to talk about, well, what's going on with other people? But if we don't ever talk about what is going on inside of ourselves, it's so easy to talk about other people. Let's start talking about ourselves. Let's get healing inside of ourselves. Let's get clarity inside of ourselves. And then that, I think, promotes healthier communities. And so that's where a lot of my work is focused, is helping people become centered and clear about who they are. And as we do that, I believe that'll transcend into a wider variety of the community.
Absolutely. You are definitely doing a great job creating a platform that can give other people the opportunity to share the process of them becoming success. And I'm also very happy you mentioned that you did not say you only bring people that are successful on your podcast. You actually bring people that are telling stories of their process of how they are making a change and what they are willing to do. And I think that's what we need. That's what all of us have to do, to put our hands on deck and find a way. Well, also, one of the reasons why you and I met is because I was always looking for how this podcast can reach a larger audience, for people to hear it and bring their own contribution. Also, part of what I'm doing is for free. I go to middle school, high school, elementary school, and talk to young kids on what goes on in the prison, because a lot of them really have no idea what their freedom, what it means for them to be able to pick up their IDs and travel from Idaho to Houston, from Houston to Las Vegas, or wherever you want to go as an American. But once you are incarcerated, these privileges is taken away from you once you become a felon. And now the next question for you is, since we can all see that our world is really changing, fathers are not home, what do you think is the biggest strategy that you can do, I can do, of how we can encourage men, despite the fact that the system does not really protect men as much as other people are protected, especially women, children, and even animals are protected than us, right? But how do you think men can stay home with their children? They can become a better part of the society, not looking at the challenge, but actually looking at the solution. And then I'm going to ask you the 4 questions I always ask on the podcast.
So I think that a big part of what each person can do is they have to just wake up first. They have to see that there's an issue with what's going on. They have to um, become aware. So I'm gonna quote a guy named Paul Hart. You can go look up this speech on um, it's on YouTube. Paul Hart, but he said in one of his speeches at a convention, he said that freedom isn't free, and that plantation, right? Because he's African American, so he said plantation sounds an awful lot like corporation. Manager sounds an awful lot like master. Salary sounds an awful lot like slavery. Okay? And so he's juxtaposing when you're in the corporate world, when you're just a sheep who's doing what you're told, you haven't really been freed yet. And then he quoted Harriet Tubman and said, I freed thousands and thousands of slaves, but I would have freed so many more if they had only known they were slaves. And that's where I say people got to wake up. People got to understand that you may not be in incarcerated slavery with chains on, but most people, doesn't matter the race, gender, whatever, you're slaves to the media. You're slaves to the world around you. You're slaves to the thinking of what other people are thinking for you rather than you thinking for yourselves. So you've got to start thinking and asking yourselves, is that right? Why is that right? How can I do better? I think that, again, it comes down to if we ask ourselves the right questions, I think our innate human biology knows when we get a wrong answer. But if we don't know the right questions to ask, then we're just left to the whims of whatever questions somebody else is telling us to ask ourselves. We've got to start asking ourselves, why is that a good question? How does that question serve me? Where is that question going to end me up? And so we got to think about what are the questions we're asking ourselves. And I think that's where a lot of it starts, is if you want to get better, you've got to wake up. You've got to listen to new things, expand your horizons. I listen to stuff that contradicts my worldview often because I just want to know, what do these people think? How do they justify what they think? How can I communicate with somebody like this? How can I reason with somebody like this? Because at the end of the day, if we don't start communicating across the aisle with people who think differently than us, then we are already separated and it's already over. If we can't get to the point where we love somebody enough to communicate truth with them, then, and objectively, right, allow them to feel their feelings and think what they think and respect that they think that still, and come back tomorrow, love them still, and say, look, let's keep having the conversation. Because if we're not willing to be evangelists for what we believe to be true, that fathers belong in the home, that the criminal justice system is not designed to actually repair people, but to incarcerate people. If we don't start to understand what it is, how can you fight against something you don't know what it is? And so we've got to get awake to the situation we're in and start asking ourselves better questions and start looking at our brothers and sisters with more compassion, love, and understanding than hate and anything else that negative feelings you have towards them.
You definitely get it. I mean, obviously you understand what is going on, and what I could summarize what you just said too is that people need to find their purpose. Especially a man needs to find his purpose. Specific. I mean, that's what you mean by what you said. We just need to wake up. We need to look at things, and you even give an insight of the person you quote as saying, what if you look at salary, it equals slavery, and other analogy that you gave. So basically, you need to find your purpose. But for you, you have already shared that path of how you found your purpose, how you were able to get it. How have you been able to continue to evolve and learn more and more? What are the practices that you have that you want to share, and what are the other things that you're doing? I mean, I know you already said it that you are trying to be a better family man. You have a podcast, but what are your own personal value? What are your personal discipline that you practice that you want to suggest or share or advise other men out there to also put as an input into their life to make them better, to help them to be able to find themselves, and even if they are already on that journey, to further sharpen their skills and get ahead of their game?
So one is just have conversations with more people. Like the more that you're willing to converse with other people and actually look at them in the eye and talk to them, don't just be on social media all the time or whatever, but actually connect with people, you're going to come across a wide variety of opinions, beliefs, whatever. And then just talk out your own beliefs. There's so much stuff that bounces around in our head that we don't know is crazy, that we don't know is like way off base until we say it out loud. And then we're like, yeah, actually, I don't know if I believe what I just said, you know? Talk therapy is so helpful. So I think you got to communicate with people, just connect, have conversations, and allow your beliefs to be challenged. And then something that somebody said to me a few months ago, named Jeremy Heriter, he said that the four worst words in the English language is, I already know that, or I've already heard that, right? The moment you close off your mind thinking that you already know, you're done listening, you're done learning. And so don't ever say that. Just say, hey, I'm always open here for a new conversation to learn something new. And that's the things that I would say I practice regularly. I encourage it in my children to go and meet new people and always talk to new people, be very social, because I want them to feel comfortable talking to anybody and conversing with them at the same level, right? Don't think that just because somebody's older than you or more successful financially or whatever, that they're better than you. Nobody's better than anybody. We're all struggling to get back to our Heavenly Father, and we're all on the same journey. And though some of us have figured out certain things, it doesn't mean they know everything, and everybody has something to learn from somebody else. And so be open to that. Don't be prideful that, yeah, everybody has something to learn from me, but be open that you have something to learn from everybody else, and you'll be surprised at what they take away and learn from you.
Absolutely, man. Continuous learning, and I also love that you share that the words for word in the English language is I already know that. That's something for me to learn too. Even though I've always been a believer of that. That continuous learning is always the best way to learn. Thank you so much for what you've shared on the show so far, and I'm gonna go ahead and ask you the four questions that I always ask every guest on the show, which I have so far gotten different perspective from. People have, and you have also said it among your during this podcast, that you have to have opinion of your own, and most of the time, what shapes our opinion is our experience, our own unique experience, what we have been through in life, and where we have been, and how we have been able to process those things that happen to us. So, my first question will be: do you think leaders are born or they are made?
This is a good question. I believe they're born. Let me explain why. Okay? I believe that every person is an example to the people around them. You're the average of the 5 people you hang out with, and if you're part of that average, then that means you're leading somebody. Now, whether you're leading somebody strong, whether they've accepted your leadership, or whether they even know that you're leading them, or you know that they're following you, everybody is a leader. By virtue of you being alive, you are leading somebody to behave in a way that you're behaving. Now, sometimes your leadership might be weak and people might overpower you. Even if you're a follower, right? Even if you're following, here's the thing about following. And maybe if you ever play the game Follow the Leader, you'd get this. But when you're following somebody, you're focused on them. But before you know it, there's a bunch of people behind you focused on you, following you. And at which point you become a leader. Every leader is there. Now, I do believe that leaders are developed in that strong leaders and influential leaders, that comes over time and through a lot of practice or intention. But everybody's leading somebody somewhere. And I think we should take note and be a lot more intentional about our actions because we know somebody's paying attention. And if you don't believe me, just have a few kids and you'll understand that your leadership gets called out all the time. You think, oh, no, this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to tell them what to do. And they're like, well, you don't do that. And you're like, oh, you're right. You're right. That's not a rule that I'm going to follow. I won't make you follow it. You know, like.
Absolutely. I mean, and that was why I said even before I asked you the question that I have had different perspective, different response, and look at how you put it also. And I have to agree with you that every one of us, in one way or the other, or in some capacity, we are leading. But for you to become, and thank you for using that word, for you to become an influential leader, the ones in a lifetime leaders, the ones that have gone up to lead a country as United States in terms of politics, the ones that have gone to lead in terms of leadership, in terms of raising young, like for example, let Dr. Miles Monroe inspire me a lot. I don't know if you've heard about him, but for someone like you, and based on what this conversation so far, there's no way you wouldn't have heard about Dr. Miles Monroe. I always call him the father I never had. I think I have learned from him in his messages and videos more than I will ever be able to learn from my own father. And my father was a good man. But learning from that kind of person, he showed the kind of leader that he was. So thank you for that perspective. My second question will be, what do you think makes a good man? Thank God you are a father. Maybe of, and how many kids do you have, Sam?
3, 6, 4, and 1 year old.
Absolutely.
So,
So again,
yeah,
what do you think
good baby.
makes a good man?
That's a hard question. I think at the end of the day, I think a good man um, is somebody who follows his conscience and does what he believes is right. What we choose to believe is right as humans is so subjective to where we were raised and who we were raised by. Um, Good is an interesting term because I feel like good applies some moral yes or like right or wrong to it. I think that some people are doing their best, and their best maybe not even where close to where I want to be, and so I avoid them. But there's a lot of people in the world who do horrendous things, thinking that what they're doing is an act of love, and to call that person a bad man because he's doing something that, based on my moral values, is atrocious behavior is disingenuous because I think it goes back to, do they really know that what they're doing is wrong, or were they taught that what they were doing is right? And then are they bad, or do they need help? And there's a big difference there. And so I think a good man is, I base off of, are you acting in congruency with what you say your beliefs are? And if you are, and I don't like your beliefs, then I'm probably going to avoid you. But I'm not going to condemn you because, it's your choices. Now, if you're going to go injure or harm other people in our community, then there may need to be some legal actions to remove you from the community to keep people safe. But even then, I would still seek for helping that person understand why the general community doesn't believe in their behaviors, rather than just saying you're bad and wrong, get out of here. It's like, why are they not behaving in a way that's good for the community?
Wow. I mean, you simplify it enough. And again, what I could say, what I could get from that is you simply said it is a man that is simply trying. And that is so right. If as long as a man keeps giving effort, like we are also here, we are in that struggle. I have two teenage daughters myself right now, and they are two different individuals. And I don't know if both of them will say the same thing about me, being a good father, but I don't know what the opinion will be. So but as long as I know that I am trying, to always be there for them, to always provide for them, to always lead them the best way I can. That is enough, and that is so spot on. And for someone like you that have learn from, that I've had the opportunity to grow up in a strong family home, that I've had mentor, that I've had a very strong community that contributed to is growing up, that you have read books, you have communicated with a lot of people. There has to be one or two quotes that you live by, that shapes your life, that guides you constantly. I have shared a couple myself. One of them is by Tony Robbins, which says, change. Don't worry about change. Change is not something that you can worry about, but progress. Progress is something you have to give work to. So change is not something you have to worry about because your body will change. But progress you have to earn it. And also, Dr. Miles Monroe in one of his quotes said, "Courage is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm." These are some of the ones that drives me. But for you, what is that favorite quote that you live by? Your one favorite quote.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you two because one is tough. One is really tough. But these
Okay,
two, I think, are
I'll
the
take
essence
two.
of my being. And the first one I learned from my dad. He said, and it was, I can still see it in orange paper uh, on my closet doors, but it said, "It's better to be trusted than to be loved." And I think that's a really interesting point because we so often think that we'd rather be loved, we'd rather be liked, we'd rather have attention, but trust is so much more valuable. That people know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and that you keep your word. So it's better to be trusted and loved. And then the second one is, there's only two types of people in this world: the ones you love and the ones you don't know. So if you find yourself not feeling charitable or loving towards an individual, then it's probably that you don't know that person well enough. You don't know their history. You don't know what drives them and why they're making those choices. And so those are the two quotes that really drive who I am. And I get a lot of my daily actions from those as guideposts.
Amazing, amazing. That definitely did an amazing job. I have learned so much from our conversation, and I'm going to add that to the data or the data of my quote as well. That it is better to be trusted than to be loved. That is such a powerful one by that. The second one as well is also very interesting. That the people, two people in the world, the people that you love and the people that you don't know. Very, very interesting, and very, very strong one there. Then my last question for the day on this great episode of Crossing Bridges podcast, which I'm sure is going to be two episodes, definitely, because I'm sure we'll have a lot of listenership and viewership for the podcast. Will be what is one uh, big leadership lesson that you have learned? Of course, obviously, as a leader, which you are, which thank God we are discussing this, we are aspiring leaders. I would rather call myself. But what is your own biggest leadership lesson that you've learned since you've been living? And please share with us.
So the biggest leadership lesson I've learned is that you have to be focused on the end goal and be aware of how you're being perceived. When I was younger, I thought I was being a leader by stepping into my mom's role, which was the enforcer. I thought that by doing so, I would be protecting my siblings from further harm. And what I found was that instead of protecting them, they felt even more betrayed because I was one of them and had switched to the other side of oppressing them. And so it didn't just cause the pain of the oppression, but also the pain of betrayal. And my older brother came home from college one time and taught me that lesson very poignantly, and I'm really grateful he did. Servant leadership is the best form of leadership. Don't abuse leadership. Lead out of love. Don't ask somebody to do something you're not willing to do yourself, and get it done. Because if you're leading with any perspective of you're the leader, and so you have special rights because you're a leader, you're failing at leadership.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sam Knickerbocker, for your time on the Crossing Bridges podcast. Definitely, I have to. I always give my guests all this opportunity. If someone needs to hear more, to want to follow you, thank God we're in this of social media. Follow your work and learn more about you and what you're doing. How can they reach out to you?
So the best place is samknickerbocker.com. And then also you can go to sam.knickerbocker on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, all of those places. But I'm definitely most active on Facebook. And then you're more than welcome to go on my website. If you do, on my website, if you click on the Fuel Your Legacy tab, then you have access to my podcast, the Fuel Your Legacy Show. And then also, if you scroll down a bit, you can see my book, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars of a Meaningful Legacy. And you can download the free ebook there, or if you prefer, you can go get it on Amazon and get the paper copy. It's a journal type book, so although there's reading portions, there's also writing portions. So I think that there's absolutely value in having a paper copy, but you're more than welcome to just print it out yourself if you'd like as well.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I want you to say, how old is your dad now and your mom? How old are they now?
I think my mom is 63 or turned 63. She was born on Flag Day, 1959. So she might be almost 64, and then my dad is almost 63.
Well, I just want you to say a very special thank you to them for doing such a good job raising such a good man, and thank you for the value you've added to the show. And I'm absolutely sure that we will definitely meet probably on stage, sharing our experience with the younger generation, and maybe have you on this podcast another time to come and share your latest work and innovation. So thank you very much for coming. Maybe you have any last word before I let you go on the show today.
Just thank you so much. I'm absolutely passionate about this topic. I think we both want to share and change the same demographic of individuals and really change the world. And that starts with one person at a time, us as individuals who are listening to this, going out and making the change inside of ourselves, and then helping other people make the change inside of themselves.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming. Well, it's been my pleasure bringing this special episode of Crossing Bridges podcast. My guest has been Sam Knickerbocker. He has shared a lot of resourceful information for us on the importance of finding your purpose very early in life, the purpose of finding a mentor. I can't say this enough. It's very, very important. And your mentor doesn't have to be somebody older. It could be somebody younger. It could be somebody online. It could be somebody you've never met. I've met a lot of people through their books that I'm not sure I will ever meet. I will never meet Jim Rohn because he's been dead for a while. I definitely would not meet Dr. Miles Monroe because he's been gone. But these guys have taught us lifelong lessons with their work. And I want you to also make this a very important part of your life. If you have the opportunity to be listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, please find someone to mentor you, read books, practice affirmation, make God the foundation of your life. Find a purpose, find something to do. Do not go through the life of crime. If you are opportune, like I always say, to be born in this United States of America, definitely you have no reason to fail. I always say there is so much available to you. There's so much resource. And of course, but you have to be willing to put it in the work. Till I see you guys again next time, God willing. It's been my pleasure. My name is Bayonle Arashi. I'm always rooting for you. Have a great one. Bye-bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Crossing Bridges podcast with Bayonle Arashi. Your comments, suggestions, and ideas are welcomed. Follow Bayonle on all social media platforms at Bayonle Arashi or visit www.bayonlearashi.com for coaching and speaking engagements. See you next time.